The protagonist, Lin Guiyun, returned home as usual, to an unwelcome home. He had lost his parents, who had left him the system. The protagonist had been performing good deeds, earning points for the system, but he didn't understand what they were for. Suddenly, a blood moon rose, and the world was about to fall into chaos. At that very moment, the protagonist received an invitation to a game that ensures human safety. The goal is to survive without being killed by a multitude of monsters. The game offers the opportunity to earn various rewards and treasures for successfully completing quests. Lin Guiyun realized that this was his only chance for survival, and his points now meant something. Suddenly, the protagonist began to move through space, and then found himself at a table with other players. The old man is so overwhelmed by that revelation that he loses his balance and falls from his chair. He immediately reaches out to help, showing concern even in the middle of his own uncertainty. The old man accepts the offered hand, and the room's tense silence briefly shifts into uneasy human contact. As everyone takes in the newcomer and the shaken elder, the group becomes fully aware that all of them have been gathered for the same purpose. One participant notes that the old man has never joined before, marking him as completely inexperienced. A woman presses him to confirm whether the terrifying claims on the official website are actually true. The man in the hoodie confirms they are, and explains that becoming a player means being forced into this game once every week. Hearing that, he silently absorbs a grim new layer of the rules. Another participant's reaction shows the same alarm spreading around the table. The group erupts in shock at the idea of being dragged into a death game every single week. The hoodie-wearing man punctuates the horror of it by slamming the table in frustration. He makes the rule even crueler by clarifying that the weekly life and death games continue without end until a player dies. Rather than panic with the others, he judges that the speaker is becoming agitated and may reveal useful information if handled carefully. He deliberately breaks the tension with calm applause, redirecting the room's attention. Presenting himself as composed and practical, he flatters the experienced player and invites him to share more knowledge that could help everyone survive. When asked about his experience, the young man admits he has at least some familiarity with this kind of situation. The older, tougher man immediately lays down survival advice: stop meddling in others' affairs, treat staying alive as the priority, and do not throw away common sense. He explains that the original Sin game draws in ghosts, spirits, and demons, making this far more dangerous than an ordinary challenge. He stresses that the game has special rules, and breaking them is even deadlier than facing monsters directly. Another participant notes that the official rules differ from game to game, leaving the newcomer frustrated by how little he understands. The silver-haired woman considers this uncertainty, sensing there is still crucial information missing. She reveals that she has just received a notification saying the newbie shop has opened and asks whether anyone knows what that means. The others quickly confirm they received the same alert, proving the message was sent to the whole group. The veteran tells them to inspect it and explains that purchases require achievement points, which only become available after clearing the first game. That raises an obvious doubt about why a shop would open now if none of them should be able to buy anything yet. One of the younger men voices that suspicion outright, wondering if the system is toying with them. An older participant asks whether the newcomer can somehow use money to obtain achievement points instead. The veteran answers with a sly confidence that achievement points can indeed be exchanged for spiritual artifacts, implying the reverse may also be possible. That possibility makes the group pause as they realize the shop may not be as inaccessible as it first seemed. The newcomer catches on as well, seeing a chance to exploit the system. He opens the interface and finds an option to exchange virtue points for achievement points. Seeing his enormous stockpile of merit and a favorable exchange rate, he excitedly calculates that he can convert a huge amount. The scale of his wealth becomes absurdly clear. He possesses more than 1 million merit points. With that advantage, he immediately decides to unlock the newbie shop. The shop reveals a list of useful beginner items, from poison and healing supplies to talismans and a rare seal. He judges that, given the exchange rate and his reserves, he could practically buy out the entire shop if he wanted. Rather than hesitate, he orders the system to convert 10,000 merit points at once. The exchange succeeds, and the shop confirms several items are now available for purchase. At that moment, the setting shifts into the game itself. A lantern-lit wedding courtyard appears, and ominous warnings make clear they have entered a ghostly banquet. The group notices singing in the distance, and the lit lanterns ahead, confirming the ceremony is already underway. The veteran slams the table and orders everyone to be quiet because the game is beginning in earnest. They see the bride seated ahead between candles, while the rules imply that disturbing the wedding or acting carelessly could be fatal. The task is announced: survive until the end of the ghost wedding in the mountains, instantly turning the dinner into a life-or-death endurance test. Around them, the wedding guests are revealed as eerie, unnatural figures, making it clear they are surrounded by the dead. As panic starts to spread among the players, the silver-haired woman watches the others lose composure. The banquet guests suddenly lunge into grotesque feeding, their inhuman hunger exposing how dangerous the scene really is. The silver-haired woman demands to know what is happening to these people as the feast turns monstrous. The veteran refuses to explain further and warns that curiosity itself will get them killed faster. A terrifying old host addresses them as honored guests and pointedly asks why they are not using their chopsticks. The newcomer realizes the old man's presence feels utterly wrong, more like a corpse than a living host. Terrified, the bespectacled woman clutches the veteran and asks what they should do. He tells her the only safe response is to ignore the pressure and remain perfectly still. The host takes their refusal as disrespect and orders that wine be served to them. More villagers close in around the table, trapping the group in the role of unwilling wedding guests. The newcomer studies the feast and realizes the contradiction. The villagers look starved, yet the dishes are lavish, suggesting the food itself is the trap. The ghostly attendants press food and drink on them with forced hospitality, making refusal increasingly difficult. One of them nearly forces meat into the newcomer's mouth, showing that the banquet's rules can be imposed physically. The entire group is harassed from all sides as the villagers chant for them to eat and drink. Under that pressure, one frightened older man gives in and agrees to drink the offered bowl. He gulps it down completely while the others watch in dread. The villagers praise his obedience, pleased that one guest has finally complied. Almost immediately, the man's face twists in horror as he realizes something is terribly wrong inside his body. He collapses to the ground, clutching his throat, clearly suffering a violent reaction. The surrounding ghosts mock him for being unable to handle even a single drink, treating his collapse as entertainment. The silver-haired woman identifies the truth at once. His dilated pupils and blackened veins mean the wine was poisoned. The protagonist realizes this so-called beginner scenario is genuinely dangerous, not a harmless game. A system alert appears, telling him that saving someone's life will trigger a special mission and increase his merit points. When the others fail to respond, he concludes the mission prompt is unique to him because of his exclusive merit system. As an old man collapses, the bespectacled woman panics and begs the others to save him immediately. The large man refuses and angrily insists the victim brought this on himself, stopping her from interfering. He doubles down, arguing that helping one person could endanger everyone else and washing his hands of responsibility. The protagonist steps forward and decides that if no one else will help, he will. He checks his items and finds a detoxifying mind-cleansing pill that can counter ordinary poisoning and corrosion. Remembering he bought it cheaply from the novice shop, he realizes it finally has a use. Without hesitation, he feeds the pill to the poisoned old man. While the others watch in surprise, the medicine begins working at once and gives off a strong fragrance. The big man is unsettled that a supposed first-timer possesses such an unusual item and starts suspecting the protagonist is not ordinary. The old man convulses as the poison is forced out of his body under the pill's effect. In moments, the corruption visibly recedes and his condition rapidly stabilizes. The woman is stunned to see the old man recover almost instantly. Once he can stand, the old man gratefully thanks the protagonist for saving his life. The protagonist supports him, taking in the old man's gratitude while staying alert. His attention is suddenly caught by a new change in the system. Golden rewards rain down as the special mission is marked complete, and he receives a large amount of merit points. He confirms that saving a life truly counted as a special mission and notes that the reward is exceptionally generous. As the reward settles, he keeps examining the system for anything else it might reveal. He notices an additional mission reminder attached to the current scenario. The reminder lays out the ghost wedding in the mountain mission chain, showing that beyond simple survival there are optional objectives with much greater rewards. He understands that basic missions are easy but pay little, while the real gains come from uncovering hidden tasks. From that, he concludes that to strengthen himself quickly, he needs to pursue those hidden missions instead of merely surviving. Even though he already has points, he decides these extra objectives are too valuable to ignore because they can unlock better shop items and power. While he thinks through this, the rest of the group remains tense and uncertain. The silver-haired woman breaks the silence by asking where the villagers have gone. Everyone realizes at once that the villagers have disappeared without anyone noticing. The protagonist figures they slipped away while the group was focused on the rescue, leaving their intentions unknown. The young man in blue argues they cannot wait around for danger to come and rushes to act. The big man tries to stop him, warning that charging ahead blindly will only get him killed. The young man reaches the building first, only to discover the door has been locked. Before he can do anything else, the big man grabs him and drags him back by force. He throws the younger man down and scolds him for being reckless and useless. The big man snaps that this is no time for stubbornness and demands he understand that impulsiveness means death. Shaken on the ground, the young man is forced to back down for the moment. The protagonist sides with the warning, pointing out that the villagers are clearly hostile and that doing nothing is still dangerous. The big man challenges him, saying they have no clues and that walking into the unknown could be exactly the trap the villagers want. The protagonist answers that they do have one lead, a natural ally who should know what is happening. His words make the silver-haired woman focus on what he means. The bespectacled woman asks him to explain who this ally is. He directs their attention to a nearby building where a red-clad figure sits amid ominous ghostly mist. He identifies the figure as the bride. He reasons that in a ghost marriage, the bride is the obvious victim and therefore the most likely person to help them. Building on that logic, he proposes approaching her for information and possibly an alliance. The big man refuses outright, fearing the bride herself may be a ghost and declaring he will not risk going. The young man in blue immediately volunteers to accompany the protagonist instead. Seeing his resolve, the silver-haired woman decides to join them too. With the old man now safe, the protagonist tells him to rest behind while the others prepare to investigate the ghost bride. 3 companions gather outside the wedding chamber, tense but committed to investigating the ghost marriage. The nervous woman decides to stay with her uncle rather than follow the others into greater danger. The black-haired leader entrusts the pair to the uncle, promising to return soon and telling them to call for help if anything goes wrong. He advances with his 2 teammates, taking charge as they head straight for the chamber. At the doorway, he pushes in without hesitation, forcing the confrontation to begin. Inside, the room is arranged like a traditional bridal chamber, with eerie attendants and a veiled bride seated in red. The attendants stand unnaturally still, making the whole scene feel staged rather than alive. He immediately recognizes the setup as suspicious and calls it bad luck that paper figures have been placed in the bridal chamber. From that clue, he reasons that the supposed ghost marriage itself is flawed, because a real bride should not be represented this way. Ready for trouble, he keeps the talisman hidden in his hand while studying the room. He tries diplomacy first, telling the veiled bride that they are trapped in the same ghost marriage and proposing that they cooperate to escape the village together. The bride gives no response at all, confirming that something is wrong. He tests his suspicion by pulling back the bride's veil himself. The reveal confirms it. The bride is only a paper figure dressed up to look human. That discovery raises a bigger problem for the group, because if this bride is fake, the real bride must be somewhere else. The silver-haired woman quietly notes that he has been certain from the start that a real bride exists. She becomes wary, because he seems to know rules of this deadly game that a first-timer should not know. A new objective appears to rescue Bai Ling, and he concludes she is a real person who must still be hidden nearby. The silver-haired woman proposes searching the room for a concealed mechanism instead of wasting time on the decoy. She begins a fast, methodical sweep of the chamber, checking every likely hiding place. Her search catches on a hidden feature near the bed, suggesting the room contains a secret compartment. Realizing she has found something important, she focuses on the bed as the key to the puzzle. She confirms that the middle of the bed is hollow, exposing the chamber as a cover for something underneath. Watching her work, the leader reassesses her and recognizes that she is far more capable and perceptive than she first appeared. The group moves at once to act on the discovery before the trail goes cold. The brown-haired man drags the fake bride aside so they can clear access to the bed. The leader keeps alert as the paper bride is tossed away, still expecting the room to turn dangerous. Working together, the 3 coordinate and prepare to lift the bed platform. They force it open and uncover a dark passage hidden beneath the bridal chamber. Seeing the opening below, the brown-haired man asks whether they should descend. The leader answers immediately and orders them down. They climb into the underground space with candles, entering a concealed chamber beneath the room above. After checking the layout, the silver-haired woman reports that there is only one route forward, so they press on. The trio advances carefully through the underground corridor, following the only path available. Their progress is interrupted when something pale suddenly reaches across the ground toward them. The brown-haired man panics and shouts that a hand has appeared. He falls back in terror as a severed-looking arm lunges near his candlelight. The silver-haired woman calmly grabs the arm before it can cause more confusion. She identifies it as another fake, just a paper figure arm rather than a real attack. Studying the scene, she starts counting the figures and searching for a pattern. She finds 6 damaged paper figures in the underground chamber, and notes that they match the number of people left above. The brown-haired man wonders if the torn figures are simply defective props, though the resemblance to players unsettles him. The leader rejects that explanation, realizing the damage must have meaning. As they look over the scattered figures, the pieces begin to fit together into the history of the ritual. He recalls that in ancient custom, a bride from a wealthy family would be accompanied by dowry attendants during marriage. That means the dowry in this ghost marriage was not just objects, but people as well. The implication hits them that the 6 people left outside correspond to those dowry attendants. He concludes that they themselves are the dowry prepared for this ghost marriage. Because the bride in the upper chamber is fake, he reasons that the entire upper bridal setup and its dowry are only decoys. He finally infers that the true bridal chamber lies deeper below, and the paper figures are false substitutes meant to hide it. The group realizes the ominous signs around them are pointing toward a deadly fate. With no time to hesitate, the young man urges everyone to move deeper inside at once. He pushes the others to find the bride quickly, warning that the 3 people outside will be in danger if they delay. They race toward a strange light at the end of the passage, hoping it leads to her. The older man spots something ahead and alerts the others before they reach it. They arrive at a sealed chamber whose entrance is shrouded in an eerie green haze. The young man forces the doors open to see what has been hidden inside. A red-lit interior confirms they have found the bride's chamber. Inside, they discover the bride lying motionless on a platform surrounded by candles, exactly where they feared she would be. Her ceremonial wedding clothes suggest she has been prepared as part of the ritual behind the haunting. The silver-haired woman checks her and confirms that the bride is still alive. A closer look shows the bride is breathing, but she remains deeply unconscious. When asked whether she can be awakened, the answer is no, leaving them with no choice but to carry her out. The young man orders the older man to help, deciding they will take turns carrying the bride. Together they lift the unconscious bride and begin moving her out of the chamber. They carefully transfer her through the room, trying not to worsen her condition. Once she is set down safely, The group regathers, tense and short of breath from the rush. Before they can settle, hurried footsteps signal that someone else is rushing toward them. The young man turns sharply, immediately sensing a new problem. 2 frightened villagers burst in and collapse near the group, bringing urgent news from outside. Panicked, they beg for help before they can barely catch their breath. The young man demands a clear explanation of what has happened. They report that a mob of villagers has gone mad, is attacking anyone in sight with farm tools, and is already being held back only with difficulty. Hearing that, the young man quickly understands the crisis has escalated beyond a simple rescue. He decides the bride must stay hidden in the room while he and the silver-haired woman go out to assess the mob. Outside, they find a hostile crowd closing in, while one man stands against them using a summoned ghostly servant as a barrier. That defender warns the mob that if they advance any farther, his ghost servant will strike. The warning fails, and several crazed villagers lunge forward anyway. The ghost servant lashes out with a sweeping attack that throws the attackers back. Seeing the spirit, the young man recognizes it as a ghost servant tied to the original Sin game. But the summoned power immediately punishes its own user, and the defender cries out as the cost hits him. The young man realizes this is not enemy backlash but the price of using the ghost servant, likely worsened by the man's already damaged body. As he analyzes the phenomenon, a system reward appears, confirming he has unlocked information about this fragment of the strange ecosystem. The new knowledge explains that this ghost pain servant is a fragment born from pain, fights with a long whip, and inflicts fixed damage on its own user with every attack. The spirit keeps the mob at bay for the moment, and the rescued woman watches its power in awe. She is impressed by the servant's strength, not yet focusing on the danger of its cost. The young man cuts through that excitement, and warns that the defender cannot endure much longer if he keeps using it. He immediately turns to the older villager and asks whether they found any escape route while searching the courtyard. The answer comes back that the west wall is lower than the rest and might be climbable. That possible route gives them a narrow chance to break out of the compound. The young man orders everyone to run west at once while he coordinates the retreat. The enraged villagers notice the fleeing group and urge each other to stop them too. The party sprints across the courtyard with enemies converging from multiple sides. One attacker nearly reaches the bespectacled woman, putting her in immediate danger. The silver-haired woman intercepts him with a brutal kick, knocking him away before he can grab her. She keeps moving through the attackers, forcing another one back with overwhelming speed. Without slowing down, she drives through the mob and turns her body into a weapon to clear their path. She slams another pursuer into the ground, decisively breaking the encirclement around the group. After dropping him, she surges forward again to continue carving a route to the west side. She finishes the sequence with another high kick, keeping the attackers off balance so the others can keep escaping. A fragile calm is broken as an egg suddenly cracks open, signaling the start of a dangerous turn. The group freezes in alarm, realizing the threat they feared is already unfolding. A silver-haired woman takes command at once and orders everyone to stop hesitating and flee. People scramble into motion, abandoning any thought of standing their ground unprepared. Instead of a clean escape, the group regathers in a tense standoff against the hostile villagers closing in around them. Their strongest ally admits his ghost servant is nearly spent, leaving them only a few attacks before their defense collapses. The young exorcist decides to gamble on a last resort method and raises a talisman. Even the man relying on supernatural help is shaken, sensing that the talisman's power far exceeds what he expected from this stranger. Calling on an old demon-killing rite, the exorcist invokes a law meant to burn away every evil thing tied to the dead. He sends the talismans flying like commands of judgment, forcing demons and monsters to retreat under spiritual law. The attack erupts beneath the villagers, blasting through their ranks and breaking their advance. A wall of golden fire rises between both sides, giving the trapped group a brief chance to breathe. The flames engulf the possessed crowd, but the chaos makes clear this is only a temporary answer. His companions are awed by the talisman's strength, and immediately want him to finish the enemies off. He refuses, explaining that the charm can expel demons but cannot simply kill bodies that are still fundamentally human. So instead of wasting time on an impossible purge, he orders everyone to return to their original escape plan. With the decision made, he bolts first, turning strategy into action before the opening closes. He vaults away and shouts for the others to run, forcing the slower members to chase after him. The group flees together, focused only on putting distance between themselves and the burning courtyard. Elsewhere, armed villagers continue patrolling, showing that the danger extends far beyond the first attack. As 2 patrolmen pass, a gloved hand reaches from hiding, setting up a silent ambush. The silver-haired woman strikes from behind and uses one villager as a hostage while her ally subdues the other. The hooded man quickly knocks his captive unconscious, making sure the patrol cannot raise an alarm. The bodies are dragged out of sight, clearing the way for the fugitives to move again. Back inside a temporary shelter, the group regroups, and the silver-haired woman warns that increasing patrols mean they cannot stay hidden much longer. Everyone turns to the exorcist for direction, treating him as the one most likely to understand how to end the nightmare. He concludes that rescuing the bride and ruining the banquet were not enough, because the ghost marriage itself is somehow still active. At that moment, the bride begins to stir, offering the first real chance to learn what they missed. Her awakening shifts the room from speculation to interrogation, as the others realize she may hold the missing clue. Still dazed, she struggles to orient herself and piece together what has happened. The exorcist gently checks her condition and asks whether she can at least remember who she is. She recalls her name, Bai Ling, but nothing about how she got there or who these people are. He explains that they were all dragged into the ghost marriage and presses her for anything she knows about it. Bai Ling admits she knows almost nothing, only that she was captured a few days earlier and forced into the role of bride. She remembers being taken in a funeral-like procession, but not why she was chosen, which deepens the mystery rather than solving it. The exorcist makes the stakes plain. If they cannot truly end the ritual, everyone will die, and Bai Ling's fate may be even worse. He pushes her to search harder, hoping some buried detail can reveal the ritual's weak point. Under pressure, Bai Ling forces herself to think back through the fragments of her captivity. She suddenly remembers one crucial detail and realizes there was a place the villagers said they still needed before the wedding could proceed. In her memory, the villagers argued that the ceremony could not continue because the path from the ancestral hall to the temple had not yet been cleared. The exorcist identifies the temple as Nyangang Temple, linking the ghost marriage to a specific sacred site. He rises immediately, having found the lead he needed. He concludes that ending the ghost marriage will require going to that ancestral hall and finishing what was left unresolved there. The target is revealed as a torchlit temple complex on the mountain, still guarded and very much active at night. One companion is horrified by the plan, arguing that returning there means walking straight back into the villagers' hands. The exorcist stays calm and answers that he already has a way to slip past them. He produces an invisibility charm that can hide everyone within a short radius for a limited time. The talisman ignites with blue spiritual fire, activating the concealment technique. As he prepares the group, he warns that the spell will break the moment they touch anyone or are touched, so absolute caution is essential. With the charm active, he quietly opens the door and begins leading the group into their stealth approach toward the temple. The group rushes through the compound under a strict time limit, knowing they must move before their chance runs out. They slip through the dark woods toward a temple complex, trying to stay hidden as they approach their objective. From cover, they watch torch-bearing searchers pass by and confirm that their concealment is still holding. One companion starts to marvel that the pursuers cannot detect them, but the leader cuts him off to keep everyone focused. Using their invisibility to bypass the patrols, they continue climbing toward the main hall while enemies move nearby without noticing them. They arrive at the ancestral hall, realizing this is the place tied to the clue they were following. The team gathers at the entrance and quickly prepares to search inside before anyone catches up. One of them slips through the open doors first to check the interior. The leader tests the hall and pushes inside, making sure the way is clear. Inside, their silver-haired ally reveals that a hidden route behind the ancestral hall leads up the mountain, giving them their next direction. The leader accepts the information and is ready to move on immediately. But something suddenly catches his attention and stops him mid-step. He and the silver-haired woman notice a book laid out prominently on a cushion, as if it was meant to be found. The book turns out to be the village chronicles, a record that may explain the village's curse. He decides the clue is too important to ignore and takes the chronicle. Opening it, he begins reading for answers before they continue. The chronicle recounts events from the 17th year of Emperor Long's reign, framing the disaster as an old historical calamity. It describes a terrifying phenomenon called Black Ghost Rain, a blight so unnatural that crops failed completely. The record says famine followed, evil spirits spread everywhere, and the village descended into chaos. The disaster became so severe that people turned on one another, reducing the village to something monstrous. As they resume climbing the mountain path, the group carries the weight of what the chronicle has revealed. The leader helps Miss Bai over the rough trail, drawing her more directly into the conversation. He asks her whether she knows what the Black Ghost Rain mentioned in the chronicle really was. Miss Bai admits that no one knows its true nature with certainty. She explains that only rumors remain, including stories that the disaster was tied to official corruption and long-buried grievances. Another account claimed heaven itself was enraged, and that the Black Ghost Rain was divine punishment falling from the sky. Miss Bai says she came here after hearing recent reports of Black Ghost Rain in Guangzhou, but she had not expected the mountain to be this dangerous. Her complaint gives one of the men an opening for a joke, but the mood stays tense despite the brief levity. The silver-haired woman immediately shuts down his antics with a sharp blow. She makes clear that this is no time for foolishness, restoring order to the group. Thinking through the chronicle, the leader recalls that the Nyanmeng Temple once protected the village from the Black Ghost Rain, but he also realizes that whatever power shielded the village ultimately twisted its people into monsters either fully human nor ghost. Before he can continue, the older man at the front suddenly halts everyone. A younger woman asks what is wrong, sensing that they have reached something important. The older man confirms they have arrived at their destination. Ahead stands a grotesque gate crowned with a horned demon face, surrounded by eerie blue flames and an oppressive supernatural presence. The leader is unsettled at once, recognizing the place as far more dangerous than expected. The older man is equally alarmed, realizing the threat is immediate. Others in the party stare in shock as the scale of the ominous sight sinks in. Even the more composed members are rattled, understanding they may have walked into the heart of the curse. The whole group faces the demonic gate, bracing for whatever is about to emerge. The older man orders everyone to leave at once, admitting this is beyond what they can handle. Before they can retreat, the sealed entrance begins to stir with a sinister response from within. A pale clawed hand slides through the opening, proving something inside has noticed them. A figure appears in the doorway and makes it clear that their arrival has already trapped them. The grinning old spirit forbids them from leaving, openly taking control of the encounter. The older man reacts instantly, recognizing they are under attack. He summons a ghost servant to fight back, bringing forth a blue spectral warrior as their first line of defense. The spirit effortlessly catches the attack, showing that its power exceeds what the group expected. Amused rather than threatened, the old ghost identifies the technique as exorcism and pointedly asks whether they belong to the reincarnation sect. A young man denies knowing anything about reincarnation, but the Taoist priest immediately identifies the spirit around him as a wild fox ghost. Grinning at his discovery, the priest prepares a spell to deal with the fox spirit directly. Deciding there is no need for restraint, he brings out a vessel meant to capture or suppress the evil ghost. With a raised hand, he unleashes a powerful exorcising force through the vessel. The summoned blue spirit surges upward over the kneeling young man, showing the priest has completely seized control of the ghost. The onlookers realize in alarm that the priest subdued the ghost-pained servant effortlessly, proving he is far more dangerous than expected. The bound spirit towers over the victim as the priest's technique continues to dominate it. He draws the ghost's power into the bull, completing the suppression ritual. Though he calls the spirit incomplete, the priest treats it as a rare offering worthy of the ghost's mother's favor. The young man collapses to his knees, drained after losing the ghost that had been attached to him. As he falls face first, the others rush toward him, but the priest keeps control of the situation. Turning to the woman in red, the priest judges from her clothing that she is meant to be tonight's ghost bride. His guess shocks her into immediate fear. She trembles, realizing she has been singled out for something far worse than an ordinary ritual. When the priest approaches, she desperately begs him not to come any closer. He coldly appraises her body and soul like merchandise, confirming she fits the role he wants. Satisfied, he concludes that the ghost mother will accept her as a proper candidate. The blue-haired young man steps in to challenge the idea, unable to accept that a ruler of the underworld would need a human bride. The interruption enrages the priest, who makes clear that defying him is courting death. Even under pressure, the young man quietly urges the frightened woman to keep stalling because they may still survive this ordeal. He then addresses the priest directly, pointing out that the rest of them are merely accompanying bridesmaids and should not be condemned with her. The priest is amused that someone facing death still dares to bargain with him. He mocks the young man's strange clothing, treating him as an outsider rather than a proper participant in the rite. The young man realizes the priest has taken the bait and is willing to keep talking. Before the priest can press further, he is suddenly grabbed at the chest from close range. The priest confronts him face to face, offended that a doomed boy would presume to touch him. Demanding an explanation, he asks who this bold stranger really is. Instead of panicking, the young man reaches calmly toward his own clothing. His hand settles with purpose, as if preparing a hidden move rather than surrendering. He claims to be only a foreigner who asked questions because he fears dying as a wandering ghost without understanding local funeral customs. Playing along, the priest explains that he wanted to avoid becoming a wandering spirit too, so he learned the truth of the ghost wedding. The young man listens carefully, hiding his tension while waiting for an opening. In an unusually generous mood, the priest agrees to explain the ritual in detail. His explanation shifts to the temple and the power behind the ceremony. He states plainly that the ghost mother requires a ghost marriage. He describes it as a ceremony in which the bride is married to the Vajra protector who serves the ghost mother. Then he reveals the rest of the group's fate as well. The so-called dowry members are nothing more than sacrificial offerings. To make sure none of them survive as wandering spirits, he launches a killing attack without hesitation. A swarm of blue ghostly projectiles tears toward the group. The four brace for impact as the barrage crashes down around them. The priest expects the strike to finish them cleanly. Instead, a burst of golden light erupts through the smoke and stops the attack. For the first time, the priest is visibly shaken, unable to understand what blocked his spell. The sudden radiance forces him into stunned disbelief. A blazing golden tiger spirit manifests behind the group, overwhelming the priest's ghostly power. The blue-haired young man steps forward holding a glowing seal, revealing that he was the one who summoned the guardian and saved everyone. The fallen companion realizes he survived and blurts out his relief, recognizing he has been rescued again. The source of the defense is identified as a white tiger seal, though using it has already consumed most of its remaining spiritual power. Knowing they cannot withstand many more attacks, the young man orders the others to retreat while he looks for a way to buy time. The silver-haired woman is left staring at him in tense silence, understanding how desperate their situation still is. A silver-haired woman urges the others to leave with her, warning that staying behind will only weigh the young man down. Elsewhere, an old Taoist priest realizes the youth is using at least a mid-tier spirit transformation artifact, and is puzzled that he sensed no spiritual power from him before. Facing the priest directly, the young man demands to know who this mysterious opponent really is. He downplays himself as an outsider and tries to stall the conflict by proposing they talk instead of fight. The priest takes that as mockery and flares with anger at being treated lightly. He immediately unleashes blue ghost fire and sends it surging forward to attack. The young man answers by calling forth a blazing tiger-shaped force to meet the assault head-on. The priest escalates with a technique called resentful ghost fire, surrounding the battlefield with multiple streams of blue flame. The young man stands his ground inside the storm, shielded by the golden tiger, as the attacks rain down. Seeing this, the priest grins, convinced he has found the youth's weakness. He mocks him as someone with no real cultivation, only borrowed strength from a weapon. Confident the tiger's power is finite, the priest vows to butcher him once that spiritual energy runs dry. The young man realizes he has let himself be pushed into a passive defense. Blue fire keeps crashing around him, forcing him to dodge and retreat instead of controlling the fight. The priest presses the advantage and taunts him for losing his earlier confidence. The young man decides that if he keeps reacting, he will eventually be worn down, so he resolves to seize the initiative. He commands the tiger to strike. The enormous golden beast lunges forward with overwhelming force toward the priest. The priest faces the charge without panic, ready with a prepared defense. The tiger's blow slams into a green barrier instead of reaching him. The priest reveals he anticipated this move and had already raised a soul banner to block it. He explains that without spiritual power of his own, the youth cannot use the weapon strongly enough to break that defense. Already planning beyond the kill, the priest reaches for the next step. He intends to use vengeful spirit ghost fire to refine the captured magical weapon after murdering its owner. At that moment, yellow talismans suddenly streak into the battlefield from another direction. The talismans explode against the barrier and the tiger's pressure, shaking the priest's protection from outside. The silver-haired woman joins the fight, raising more talismans to support the young man. She coldly asks whether the priest is still so eager to die now that he is being attacked from two sides. Under the combined assault, cracks begin spreading across the green barrier. The priest panics as his supposedly secure defense starts to fail. The young man instantly calls for the finishing blow. The woman launches another volley of talismans to open the barrier further. The tiger surges in through the opening and tears into the weakening defense. The barrier collapses in a violent blast. The priest is hurled away by the impact and crashes hard across the ruins. Badly shaken, he demands to know what they have done to him. The young man reveals that the priest's spiritual power was exhausted before the magical weapon's power was. The priest cannot accept it, insisting that should be impossible as long as the ghost mother statue still exists. The young man picks up on that admission and points out the implication that the statue is what sustains the priest's power. When pressed on how he knows, the priest is forced to listen. The young man recounts an old record stating that in Emperor Long's 12th year, a mountain flood swept away the ghost mother statue. He continues that a long search followed in the floodwaters to recover it. Those who failed to find the statue were brutally flogged, showing how desperately the village depended on it. Even after the statue was lost, the village suffered repeated disasters and still kept worshipping the ghost mother in fear and submission. From those records, the young man questions whether whipping people was really the only punishment tied to the statue's loss. He pushes further, suggesting that in other years the consequences were even more absolute and murderous. A terrified blonde man suddenly runs in and confesses that he was the one who stole the statue. The priest recognizes him at once, his fury exploding as the truth surfaces. He lunges toward the thief in a frenzy, abandoning all restraint. The young man blocks his path with the golden tiger and calls out, demanding to know where the Taoist priest thinks he is going. A ragged old man tries to retreat through the graveyard-like ruins. He suddenly realizes the others may have been manipulating him from the very beginning to draw his attention. The young man confirms it, revealing that the entire sequence of events had been deliberately arranged. He explains that the old man doomed himself by keeping records that exposed his own weaknesses. The old man recoils as the incriminating diary is cast aside and his defeat becomes undeniable. Nearby, the surviving players absorb the result, with one of them admitting he has been waiting a long time for this ending. Their focus settles on the ghost mother statue, the key object tied to the scenario. The protagonist checks the system notice and sees that the mission has been cleared and the ghost marriage game has ended. Another player, still holding a small statue, blurts out that the system has also declared the game over. He kneels and asks for confirmation, hardly believing they have really made it out. The protagonist confirms he received the same notice, making it official that the scenario is finished. The tension breaks so abruptly that one woman starts trembling and losing control of her emotions. She bursts into tears, overwhelmed by the release after surviving the ordeal. A companion awkwardly points out that no one was killed, failing to grasp how much fear she had been carrying. Even he recognizes the emotional collapse as a cruel aftereffect of their bad luck. The silver-haired woman steps in to steady the crying survivor and shield her from further embarrassment. Faced with the aftermath, the cap-wearing man immediately gives up any resistance. The protagonist and the silver-haired woman stand over the fallen opponent, now fully in control of the scene. When asked about him, they determine that he is only unconscious and not in immediate danger. The protagonist repeats the core fact to himself: the game is truly over. A woman in red quietly admits she does not know how long she will remain trapped here even though the others may soon leave. The silver-haired woman explains that settlement usually lasts 5 to 15 minutes before surviving players are sent back to where they entered the game. That detailed knowledge makes the protagonist suspicious, and he studies her more carefully. When he asks how she knows so much, she reminds him that he is not the only one hiding secrets. Before that mystery can be pressed, their attention shifts to the woman in red standing apart from the group. The silver-haired woman asks what the red-dressed woman plans to do next and whether she can leave on her own. The woman in red instead asks whether her benefactors are about to depart. The silver-haired woman moves closer, trying to continue the conversation directly. Their exchange is cut short when both sense a sudden disturbance overhead. A violent shock tears through the area, announcing a new arrival. Mounted figures burst into the scene at full speed through the blue haze. An armored rider leads the charge, forcing his horse to rear as the troop arrives. The group braces in front of the ominous gate as the cavalry surrounds the grounds. The protagonist quickly reassures the woman in red that these are her family's people coming for her, not enemies. She confirms Bai Ling is safe and calmly wonders which of her father's generals has come to retrieve her. One armored commander dismounts and approaches with formal urgency. He kneels, identifies himself as Jing Wei of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry, and apologizes for arriving late enough to deserve death. Seeing the commander kneel before her makes clear that the woman in red holds far greater status than the others first assumed. The protagonist realizes her future is settled now, and that she no longer needs their help finding where to go. Before he can dwell on that, strange energy begins flickering around his body. The silver-haired woman notices the same effect on herself, and remarks that there may be no chance for a proper farewell. Columns of crimson light descend, signaling the forced extraction of the surviving players. The commander is alarmed that the strangers seem to vanish without even leaving a trace of breath, while the woman in red can only guess they are some kind of unusual outsiders. As the reward screen opens, the protagonist sees the game completion notices and decides to review everything quickly before the next mission begins. He calculates that clearing every mission only earned 14,000 achievement points, far less than the value of what he spent. He concludes that relying on basic missions alone would make the system store absurdly inefficient, requiring several games for even a single worthwhile exchange. That imbalance helps explain why another player has shown so little interest in interfering with ordinary scenarios. The protagonist decides his real shortage is not points but access to the store's products, and he prepares to use the system while he still can. A red interface asks whether he wants to log out and return to reality. He selects agreement as the extraction completes and his body is carried back toward the real world. The young man realizes he has somehow returned to his original place instead of remaining where the game left him. He notes that only a few minutes seem to have passed in the real world despite everything he experienced. That mismatch in time and reality leaves him disoriented, as if the world around him is warping. Overwhelmed by the implications, he blames his pounding head on thinking too much. Deciding he cannot process any more tonight, he collapses onto the bed and puts everything off until tomorrow. Sleep does not come easily, and he wakes in discomfort almost immediately. He forces himself upright, still groggy and unsettled from the night before. As he gathers himself, he hears someone at the door far too early in the morning. Suspicious but curious, he goes to answer it. He reaches for the doorknob cautiously. The visitor addresses him formally by name, confirming they came for him specifically. A silver-haired woman identifies herself as a representative of the Human Security Assurance Bureau and requests his cooperation in an investigation. The Bureau's name shocks him because it matches the official organization tied to the strange game. He immediately presses her on whether his appearance in the game was really accidental and how they found his address. She explains that the original Sin game selects players at random, so their encounter there truly was chance. She refuses to answer how they tracked him down unless he cooperates first. The threat behind her polite tone becomes clear when armed personnel are revealed nearby, making refusal feel dangerous. He stiffens, realizing he is in no position to challenge them openly. Trying to mask his fear with humor, he asks whether their investigation involves treating players like lab specimens. She assures him that every player is considered valuable, and that cooperation will keep him safe. Still wary, he points out the armed guard as evidence that her reassurance is hard to trust. She repeats that they mean him no harm as long as he cooperates. To prove she controls the situation, she gives a small signal. The nearby operative lowers his weapon, showing her promise has immediate force behind it. He quickly surrenders and agrees to cooperate completely. Once the immediate danger passes, he asks for time to change out of his dirty clothes. She grants him 15 minutes and makes it clear they will leave on her schedule. Soon after, he is brought outside to a waiting convoy. The woman orders him into her vehicle, keeping control of the encounter. During the drive, he learns that the rookie mission from the previous day has already been evaluated as extremely difficult. She credits him with most of the group's survival, offering blunt recognition that he carried the mission. But she adds that the organization's real interest is not just his performance, but who he is, and says her clearance limits what she can reveal. The convoy accelerates hard, signaling the urgency and importance of where they are taking him. Escorted by multiple vehicles, he is transported under heavy protection. Their destination turns out to be a major headquarters building. She announces their arrival as the convoy pulls in. At the entrance, security demands identification before allowing them through. Her credentials are scanned and confirmed, establishing her authority inside the bureau. The guards welcome her back as a team leader, and she proceeds without delay. He is taken into a conference room for whatever explanation awaits him. The setting is prepared like a formal meeting rather than an interrogation cell, which only deepens the mystery. When he demands to know why he was brought here, she tells him he will learn soon enough. Before she can say more, someone else enters the room. The newcomer's presence immediately shifts the atmosphere from official procedure to something more personal. An older man greets him warmly as Xiao Yun and asks about his health, as if they already know each other well. Startled, Xiao Yun recognizes him as Uncle Bai and cannot understand why he is here. The man is revealed to be Professor Bai, a respected scholar with long ties to the Lin family. Bai jokes that perhaps his own research background makes him a player too, defusing the tension while hinting he knows more than expected. The silver-haired agent explains that Professor Bai is the Bureau's chief consultant and a key member of its research team, with even higher honorary status inside the organization. Bai modestly dismisses the title, saying he only inherited the position because Feng Yan and his wife disappeared, revealing that their absence lies behind this meeting. A young man arrives in tense uncertainty, already being drawn into something larger than he expected. He is stunned to learn that his parents were not ordinary people but were connected to the Human Security Assurance Bureau. An older researcher realizes the truth about his parents had been deliberately kept from him. He is told that Lin Fengyan and Jiang Hongli were founding veterans of the Bureau who first uncovered anomalies in reality and foresaw the rise of the original Sin game. The explanation turns grim as the researcher implies that brilliance like theirs invited disaster rather than reward. The son immediately understands the implication and demands to know whether his parents' fatal car crash was staged and whether they might still be alive. The researcher starts to answer, suggesting the truth is even more complicated than a simple death. Before he can continue, the silver-haired woman cuts him off and reminds them that the rest is classified beyond Lin Guiyun's current clearance. Blocked from the truth about his own family, Guiyun angrily demands to know why he has no right to hear it. The woman offers him a path forward. If he wants answers, he must sign on and become part of the organization. Guiyun hesitates over the contract, realizing this is not just an explanation but a recruitment. The danger behind the offer is made clear by visions of monstrous distortions and catastrophic threats the Bureau confronts. She warns him that joining means entering a war against distortion, where madness, strangeness, and death are constant possibilities. Even so, Guiyun focuses on one practical line in the agreement and checks whether the Bureau is promising not to throw people away pointlessly. She answers that every player is valuable and that they do not sacrifice people unless a greater rescue truly depends on it. The Bureau's logic is ruthless but utilitarian. Some losses are accepted only to prevent even larger tragedies. Accepting that condition, Guiyun signs, deciding that risking himself is worth it if it leads to saving lives and uncovering the truth. He steels himself with confidence, convinced he will survive long enough to learn what really happened to his parents. Elsewhere, unseen observers watch the recruitment and begin judging whether this new recruit is worth the trouble. One assessment paints him as reckless, proud, hot-blooded, and difficult. Another observer counters that those same flaws may simply mean he is promising. The hidden watchers remain in the shadows, treating his induction as something important enough to monitor closely. Their banter reveals a division of roles, with one focused on analysis and another on direct action. Back in the room, the signing is treated as a binding commitment that makes Guiyun one of their own. The older researcher leaves the onboarding to Xiao Qing, trusting her to handle the next stage while he returns to other urgent work. Once he is gone, the room shifts from recruitment to orientation as Guiyun and Xiao Qing face each other alone. They settle into a formal introduction, beginning the process of turning him from outsider into operative. Guiyun tries to address her properly, still feeling out the hierarchy around him. Xiao Qing introduces herself as Ji Qing, formerly head of the Bureau's Intelligence Analysis Group and now leader of the 2nd Special Operations Group. Their handshake marks the start of a working relationship rather than a friendly welcome. Guiyun awkwardly begins introducing himself, only to find that formality is unnecessary. Ji Qing immediately recites his identity and status, making it clear the Bureau has already investigated him thoroughly. She has his basic profile down to the smallest detail. That profile includes the fact that he is the son of 2 famous scholars whose legacy still matters to the Bureau. She continues through his academic failure and personal background, showing that nothing about him was left unchecked. Guiyun finally explodes at the invasion of privacy, more offended by the personal speculation than the surveillance itself. Ji Qing calmly tells him that the Bureau knows him very well, and that the public-facing agency he found online is only a cover identity. She reveals that they are the official organization responsible for handling abnormal incidents, including the original Sin game. That wording catches Guiyun's attention because it implies the game is only one threat among many. He presses her directly, asking whether other abnormal incidents exist beyond the original Sin game. Ji Qing confirms that such incidents have a far longer history than he imagined and hands him a file to prove it. Guiyun opens the file expecting a simple explanation and instead finds a much deeper archive. The document lists a series of bizarre historical cases, showing that the abnormal has been surfacing for well over a century. Ji Qing explains that those earlier incidents were once isolated flare-ups, dangerous but limited enough to be contained one by one. Now the situation has changed. The monster at the center of the cave is the original Sin game, and it has emerged as the dominant threat. When Guiyun asks whether the older incidents vanished after the game appeared, Ji Qing says they did not disappear so much as become incorporated into it. Citing Professor Lin's theory, she explains that the original Sin game acts like a black hole, swallowing other anomalies and turning them into smaller worlds within itself. With the lesson delivered, Ji-Ching rises, leaving Guiyun to absorb how vast the threat really is. She sums it up plainly. The Bureau's central mission now is the original Sin game and every derivative incident born from it. As she reaches for the switch, the briefing moves toward its next stage, implying there is still much more for Guiyun to learn. Lin Guiyun asks what derived incidents are, prompting the woman to begin a formal explanation. She explains that derived incidents fall into two main categories, starting with problems caused by players. The first category involves players who lose control after gaining power from the game. Some of those empowered players turn harmful, becoming threats to ordinary society. Because of that, the Bureau's first duty is to monitor, manage, and if necessary restrain such players. Lin presses on and asks what the second category is. She shifts the lesson from players to a second source of danger, dungeons. She makes clear that dungeons themselves are a separate class of derived incident. She clarifies that this does not mean the mission stages inside the original Sin game, but something that appears in the real world. These real dungeons manifest as ominous locations in reality rather than virtual game spaces. The documents in Lin's hands support that this is an official, real-world phenomenon. Lin is shaken by the idea that the game's effects can spill directly into reality. She reminds him that the official site already warned that mission failure would bring severe consequences. That warning makes Lin suspect he is finally understanding what those consequences truly mean. A failed game can end with every player dead, marking the mission as a total failure. When that happens, the failed dungeon materializes in reality and becomes a real-world disaster zone. She identifies these manifested dungeons as the second kind of derived task the Bureau must handle. Lin realizes this raises even bigger questions about how often such dungeons appear and how much danger has been hidden from him. She reassures him that dungeon response is usually handled by experienced veterans who have cleared several games. With the overview finished, she moves on to the equipment prepared for his entry. She opens the case to show the tools the organization is issuing him. Among the contents, the handgun immediately stands out as the most alarming item. Lin is startled that the Bureau is equipping him with a gun as well. She handles the weapon with practiced ease, showing that this is standard field gear rather than a bluff. She tells him the box also includes a legal permit and that she will teach him the basics later. When she tosses the gun over, Lin panics, revealing how unprepared he still is for this world. Her warning is blunt. The organization's trust is limited, and reckless misuse will turn him into a target instead of an agent. Lin takes the pistol more carefully, forced to confront the seriousness of what he has joined. She next points out a specially made phone with satellite capability that will carry all Bureau tasks and communications. She also introduces a watch with a bullet detection function that lights up whenever something abnormal is detected. To prepare him further, she explains the ranking of dangerous creatures, with higher colors marking more lethal threats. The briefing reaches a pause as the lesson transitions away from theory. Before training can continue, Lin notices someone arriving at the door. A stern older official enters, immediately changing the tone of the room. The woman recognizes him as the deputy director and questions why he has come personally. The deputy director, Su Jingnan, asks how far Lin's training has progressed. She explains that the basic orientation is done and they were about to begin live firearms training. Su cuts that plan short, saying a more urgent assignment has just come in. He hands over mission papers, turning the lesson into an immediate deployment. The assignment is a containment mission at a place called Cabin in the Woods, involving an out-of-control dungeon rated at night danger level. The mention of dungeon containment makes clear that this is not routine fieldwork but a serious real-world crisis. The woman objects at once, alarmed that Lin is being pushed into this after completing only one game. Su refuses to reconsider and tells Lin his only choices are to accept the mission or decline it. Lin stays cautious and asks what refusing would actually cost him. Su says there is no punishment beyond erasing Lin's Bureau ties, voiding his agreement, wiping his memory, and sending him back to his old life. Lin realizes this is effectively a test, but also that walking away would destroy his chance to learn anything about his parents. Driven by that goal, he chooses to accept the mission. Su approves and says the Intelligence Analysis Department will deliver the detailed mission briefing. After the deputy director leaves, Lin is left staring at the closed door, feeling the weight of what he has just agreed to. Silence settles over the room as both of them absorb that the training phase is over and the real danger has begun. The young player senses the deputy director's unusual scrutiny and realizes this meeting is not routine. The deputy director explains that the Bureau rarely recruits people who have cleared only one game, because such unstable newcomers usually die soon after. The scene shifts to the Bureau's leadership treating his case as a serious exception worthy of direct review. He learns that Professor Bai's team urgently submitted his file to the director overnight, pushing him into consideration. The deputy director's reputation is made clear. She is the Bureau official most rigidly bound to rules. Her sharp tap on the table reinforces that this conversation will proceed on her terms. He pieces together that being brought in through the back door means he may be in real trouble this time. She dismisses that suspicion and frames her actions as nothing more than carrying out her duty. While contacting the intelligence team through her headset, She warns that this mission is unusually difficult and beyond what a novice should normally handle. He counters that the Bureau's contract also forbids deliberately sending members to die, testing how far her rule-following goes. By invoking her strict adherence to regulations, he pressures her to admit she cannot openly sacrifice him. Without indulging the argument, she ends the meeting and leads him out to move on to the mission itself. They leave the Bureau building, taking the matter from internal review to field deployment. Outside, she gets into a vehicle and expects him to follow without further debate. Her order is simple and final: get in the car. Once they are moving, she has him put on a headset and requests support for an incident called Cabin in the Woods. The support network comes online, confirming that the mission has been formally connected to intelligence analysis. A support specialist named Iris joins the channel to provide operational information. Iris reports that Cabin in the Woods appeared 36 hours earlier, contaminated roughly 1,200 square meters, and has already been sealed off. The temporary team is identified as veteran leader Li Xiuyang with Ji Qinglin and Lin Guiyun under him, and Iris confirms that is all the current intelligence. The deputy director signals there is nothing more to ask and keeps the operation moving. The young man realizes a veteran is leading the mission and suspects the deputy director is really testing whether he dares to go through with it. When Li Xiuyang's name is mentioned, the deputy director's expression hardens, hinting at a complicated history. He imagines the veteran as an imposing, formidable figure and raises his expectations accordingly. She immediately cuts that image down and warns him not to expect much from Li Xiuyang. When he asks why, she only says he will understand once they meet him. The car speeds toward the contaminated zone as that warning hangs over the trip. At the site, the truth is far less impressive. The veteran is collapsed on the ground, vomiting into a bucket. The newcomer is stunned that this pitiful drunk is supposed to be the veteran in charge. The briefing on Li Xiuyang reveals that despite his age and official rank, his heavy drinking has ruined his reliability and left him with a very low completion rate. The deputy director uses the site before them to prove why she called him unreliable. Taking control of the scene, she orders cold water to be brought immediately to force him awake. The order is carried out without hesitation. A torrent of cold water slams into Li Xiuyang and shocks him back toward consciousness. Still dazed and dripping, he barely understands what is happening and wonders if it has started raining. The deputy director bluntly tells him it is mission time, and he recognizes her voice at once by her old codename, Bluebird. Even half awake, he reacts with dreamy delight instead of professionalism. He convinces himself he must be dreaming, because seeing Bluebird in person feels too good to be real. Annoyed, she orders that if more water does not wake him, they should simply carry him inside. Rather than wait on him, she decides to inspect the site herself and has a soldier guide the way. As they move in, the newcomer asks about the strange name Li Xiuyang used for her. She explains that Bluebird was her codename back when she served in the intelligence analysis group. Through the earpiece, someone adds that Qinglin used to be their captain, confirming her former authority. The team advances deeper into the zone under armed escort, leaving the drunken veteran behind for the moment. They finally face the source of the incident, a grand mansion warped by violent red distortions tearing through the air around it. The newcomer struggles to describe the sensation, but realizes it is not simple fear so much as reality feeling wrong. He identifies the phenomenon as an out-of-control dungeon, like foreign fragments being forced into the real world. As the mansion groans under the distortion, an alarm begins sounding from his wrist device. He wonders if the alarm means some strange entity has escaped from the dungeon. The deputy director corrects him immediately. This is not a mere strange occurrence, but a distortion of reality itself. A silver-haired team leader orders everyone into protective suits and has Iris check their position and whether the distortion is spreading. As the group gathers outside the target site, the newcomer questions both what a distortion is and why some of them are not suiting up. The leader explains that they do not need suits and gives him a rush field lesson so he can understand the danger quickly. She defines strange phenomena as the broad category behind supernatural events, whether they involve monsters, locations, or abnormal rules. She adds that distortions are secondary effects of those phenomena, spreading like contamination or radiation. Those distortions can infect ordinary people and gradually warp them into monsters, while protective suits only slow that erosion. That explanation makes the newcomer realize the implication and question why he and the others are exempt. He fixates on the phrase ordinary people and begins to understand that he is being set apart from them. He concludes that they do not need protection because they are players rather than normal humans. The leader confirms it, saying players have already been altered by the greatest strange phenomenon of all. Iris reports that the target distortion has expanded by 50 meters in 10 hours and is now accelerating. Hearing that, the leader immediately raises the threat assessment and asks how fast support can be mobilized. Control answers that reinforcements cannot arrive in time, and with the village only 300 meters away, the crisis is already too close to civilians. The leader shifts priorities to evacuation first and urgent backup second. The newcomer tries to steady the situation by insisting it may still be salvageable and offering to attempt something himself. At the mansion classified as a night-level cabin, the leader warns that the place contains at least one complete supernatural rule and tells them not to lower their guard. She clarifies that this mission is only an investigation and that they must be ready to retreat the moment real danger appears. As they enter, she urges the team to stay together as tightly as possible. She steps through first, trying to lead the others safely inside. Even while holding the door, she repeats the key rule: no one can afford to get separated. A sudden shift in the environment makes her sense that something is wrong. She turns in alarm, realizing the situation has changed the instant they cross the threshold. Inside, the space has become warped and unstable, with the interior no longer behaving like a normal room. The newcomer and his companion are left together, shocked by the abrupt change. He contacts Iris at once and reports that Ji Qinglin has vanished right in front of them. Back at control, Iris confirms that Ji Qinglin's location has been lost completely and communication cannot be re-established. The newcomer struggles to understand how that is possible when their positioning system is supposed to work anywhere. His companion explains that such tracking only works on Earth. He concludes that Ji Qinglin has been dragged into a different space entirely, which is why she cannot be reached. Recalling the advanced team's notes, he points out that this site already showed signs of space-related abnormalities during preliminary investigation. Those earlier anomalies involved folded space and displacement, but only in limited ways such as mismatched dimensions and disordered doorways. What makes this worse is that no one has ever recorded a force transfer like this, and the intelligence recommendation is now to abandon the mission and wait for support. Even so, they recognize that spatial rules are the core problem and weigh whether they should retreat. The newcomer falls silent and starts thinking through another option instead of accepting withdrawal. He commits to that idea internally, deciding to act before the situation worsens. He asks for a minute, buying time to try his own method. Privately, he calls up the system's rewards exchange shop, intending to use player resources to solve what the team cannot. A vast system interface opens before him, showing he is turning to an extraordinary tool rather than ordinary equipment. Elsewhere, Ji Qinglin keeps trying to call Iris, hoping the command link still works from wherever she has been sent. Her device shows no signal at all, confirming the separation has cut her off from the network. She realizes the communication failure is happening on her side, not at headquarters. Unable to reconnect, she decides the priority is to leave this trapped space before it closes around her further. She launches into motion without hesitation. Moving fast through the distorted mansion, she searches for a route back while treating every doorway as a possible trap. She vaults across the architecture, using speed and precision to test the shifting environment. After landing, she keeps her balance and presses forward instead of slowing down. A new irregularity catches her attention and forces her to stop short. She stares toward the doorway and realizes the interior and exterior no longer connect in any normal way. Understanding dawns on her that the mansion is folding space itself. With that realization, she immediately changes direction and rushes to exploit the warped layout before it shifts again. A silver-haired woman paces the mansion in frustration, still searching for a way out of the trap. She tests the space again, but the place keeps folding her back into the same interior. Realizing escape is impossible for now, she steadies herself in the corridor lined with armored statues. She admits that every attempt to leave only returns her here, confirming they are sealed inside. Accepting that, she decides their only option is to keep pushing deeper into the gallery. As she advances, an eerie current stirs through the hall, signaling that the place is reacting to them. Elsewhere, her two companions reach the same ominous corridor, and the woman hesitates at the threshold. The young man answers without hesitation that he intends to go in. He commits first and steps across the boundary. His companion follows him into the haunted passage. Together they move deeper between the silent suits of armor and paintings. The young man calls Iris and asks for a full recap of everything their advanced team uncovered in the dungeon. Iris begins by stating that they have gathered 3 major clues so far. The first clue is that the gallery centers on a family of 3, and one member has been seeing visions of that family's life. The second clue is that the statues conceal bones, and the place has seen many deaths. The third is that they encountered a wandering killer whose body seems less vulnerable to gunfire because of a mutated core. Putting the clues together, the young man sees a pattern of hidden corpses, serial murder, and a ruined family. Before they can reason further, a glowing female spirit suddenly appears and announces that they have finally arrived. Both intruders freeze, shaken by the apparition blocking their path. The ghost faces them with an overwhelming, unnatural presence. Her sudden force knocks both of them back and establishes that she controls the encounter. She turns directly toward the young man, singling him out as the one she wants. At close range, she silently pressures him until he can only stare back in alarm. Then she drifts away and orders them to follow her deeper into the gallery. The woman asks what they should do, and the young man decides they have no choice but to follow. They trail the spirit through the corridor, wary that she may be leading them toward another clue or a trap. Trying to push responsibility onto his companion, the young man reminds him that dealing with this should be a Taoist priest's specialty. The priest flatly rejects the premise, insisting ghosts do not exist and that he remains a strict materialist. The young man dryly points out that the glowing woman ahead is the perfect rebuttal to that claim. Examining the phenomenon more carefully, the priest argues that what they are seeing is not a ghost but an anomaly. He explains that a powerful distortion can manifest in forms people interpret as supernatural. According to current theory, such anomalies are shaped by human belief, often taking on familiar legendary forms. The young man accepts the explanation only halfway and asks what practical difference that makes. The priest compares it to lightning once being blamed on divine punishment. In the past, people wrapped natural danger in moral superstition. Now they understand the real cause, and the priest argues anomalies should be treated the same way. He concludes that superstition explains nothing, while science at least gives them a framework to act on. The young man turns back to the painting the anomaly led them to and asks what message it is trying to convey. The image shows a child at an upper window and suggests someone inside that family home was trying to call for help. The priest suddenly spots the spirit reappearing near another painting and realizes she is directing them onward. Both men rush after her, following the trail from one image to the next. The next painting reveals the real horror, a man attacking someone with a weapon while a terrified girl hides nearby. From that scene, the young man concludes the spirit may be warning them that the father was the true danger. Before they can process it, one of the armored statues behind them comes alive and closes in with a raised polearm. The dead metal face turns toward them, confirming the gallery itself has become hostile. The animated knight lifts its weapon overhead and prepares to cut them down. It brings the blade crashing into the floor, and both men barely evade the strike. The young man counters by drawing a talisman, readying a supernatural measure of his own. At the same time, the priest whips out his ritual beads and shifts from debate to combat. As the knight recovers amid dust and broken stone, they launch their counterattack together. An explosive trap erupts inside the mansion, throwing two intruders apart as the danger of the place becomes immediately real. One of them mocks the other for not acting like a proper cultivator, and pushes him to get back up despite the chaos. The young man catches himself, startled by something he senses is wrong beyond the blast itself. As he steadies himself on the floor, even the scattered stones seem to react unnaturally, deepening his confusion. He suddenly realizes a larger threat is approaching and warns the others just as it closes in. A spectral armored warrior with a halberd materializes between them, forcing both intruders into immediate defense. The spirit fully forms in a burst of energy, confirming the mansion is spawning hostile entities. With the armored ghost attacking from behind, the pair abandon any thought of fighting and flee down the corridor. Elsewhere in the mansion, a silver-haired woman explores alone by phone light, moving through halls lined with statues and armor. She notes that the interior distances make no sense, suspecting the mansion's space is distorted rather than merely large. Her light catches another figure ahead, and she stops to assess whether she has found someone else trapped inside. The encounter puts her on guard as she prepares to identify the stranger. She finds a nurse-costumed girl who immediately guesses she may be connected to the injured uncle and his group. The nurse explains she recently met a half-naked man and a wounded older man searching for a missing companion, and asks if this woman is that person. The silver-haired woman confirms she was lured here by Fatty-chan and demands to know who the nurse really is. She recalls the case. A cabin appeared in the woods, hunters reported it, and civilians should never have been allowed inside this mansion. That memory makes her scrutinize the nurse more closely. The nurse senses the suspicion, while the woman silently concludes there is something off about her. Trying to normalize herself, the nurse claims she is just a paranormal live streamer who came here for content. The explanation only earns skepticism from the silver-haired woman. The nurse tries to sell herself as a famous online personality, expecting recognition to make her story believable. The woman flatly rejects the act, making it clear the performance is not working. Still pretending nothing is wrong, the nurse says she has already filmed enough and is ready to leave and reunite everyone. The silver-haired woman stops her before she can walk off. She warns that if the nurse is heading for the doors, she will discover that leaving is no longer possible. The nurse balks at the claim, unable to accept that they could be trapped. The woman explains that the mansion's interior space has folded in on itself, and until the root cause is removed, anyone who enters remains imprisoned. Refusing to believe it, the nurse runs for the exit anyway, convinced she is only being frightened. She charges through the doorway expecting freedom. Instead, she loops straight back into the same corridor, proving the mansion has sealed itself into a spatial trap. The shock finally breaks her confidence as she realizes the warning was true. From down the hall, the silver-haired woman coolly asks whether the nurse believes her now. The nurse admits in panic that they really are trapped. Taking control of the situation, the woman asks where the nurse last saw the others, and learns they were headed to the art studio at the end of the hall. As they move together, the nurse connects their situation to a local tale about a mansion no one can escape. The woman recognizes that the mansion's behavior matches that story too closely to ignore. She presses the nurse to explain exactly what legend she means. The nurse names it as the legend of the art gallery killer. According to the tale, the mansion's owner went mad one day and butchered his entire family before vanishing without a trace. Since then, anyone who steps inside can never find the exit and becomes lost in the house forever. The legend says those trapped eventually encounter the deranged father himself, and when they do, they become his next victims. Walking behind the woman, the nurse ominously points out that the story is still missing an important detail. The woman senses the shift too late and turns in confusion. The nurse reveals the omitted truth. The father's victims became vengeful spirits, endlessly hunting for replacements. She presses the point with unsettling certainty, exposing that she knows far more than a mere streamer should. When the nurse grabs her arm, the silver-haired woman instantly counters with crackling spiritual lightning. The current surges through the nurse's body, burning away the false human facade. The disguised spirit screams as the exorcising power tears through her form. By the end of the blast, the nurse's body is gone, leaving only a blue female ghost facing the silver-haired woman in the haunted corridor. A raging blue spectre demands to know when its deception was uncovered. The silver-haired woman reveals she had been trapped in the same folded space all along, making the ghost's attempt to lure her into its illusions suspicious from the start. She pushes the logic further and realizes the only way the trap makes sense is if the enemy already knew everything that had happened here across past and present. Acting on that conclusion, she launches herself forward to end the exchange by force. She crashes down on the spectre with lightning-charged power before it can recover. The ghost is overwhelmed and driven back by the electric assault. She stays on it relentlessly, keeping the pressure on with crackling energy. Her azure lightning strike slams the spectre into the floor in a decisive finishing blow. As she pins it down, she vows that this offense will bring down her father's wrath as well. The impact blooms outward in a violent burst, suggesting the spirit has finally been broken apart. But the aftermath hits her mind instead, as a psychic backlash or lingering influence makes her clutch her head in pain. Her senses distort, and the hallway around her blurs into a disorienting haze. Through the distortion, a portrait of a uniformed man stands out as if tied to the mystery. She forces herself back to clarity, shaken but still trying to assess what just happened. Realizing the spectre is no longer in front of her, she wonders if it escaped rather than died. A heavy blade scraping across the floor answers her with a far more dangerous presence approaching. Listening closely, she identifies the sound as heavy footsteps dragging something massive and fears the legendary father statue has begun to move. Elsewhere, two men hiding by a doorway hear the disturbance and tense up as the noise nears them. When the sounds suddenly stop, they cautiously conclude the immediate threat has passed. The older man tries to defuse the fear by joking that this is exactly how horror stories lure victims into relaxing too soon. He paints the scene as the moment when the supposed survivors think they have finally escaped. He continues the joke by describing the fatal instant when relief makes them careless. Then he delivers the punchline by imitating the killer appearing behind them, which terrifies them both because it feels too plausible here. The mood lands like a horror ending, underscoring how close they feel to disaster. He dryly concludes that in those stories the victims die and the credits roll, only to be met with silence instead of laughter. The younger man cuts through the joke after noticing the father statue is truly gone, and insists they move immediately. He heads out at once, leaving the older man scrambling after him and demanding an explanation. The younger man explains that he is not fleeing blindly but investigating, because they have already shattered that statue 11 times. From repeated observation, he tracked a pattern in its resurrection, after the third strike with a peachwood sword, seventh with a demon-suppressing talisman, and first with an oxhorn blade used together, the statue still revived after a fixed delay. The older man is stunned that anyone kept count of such details in the middle of chaos. The younger man concludes that the statue's resurrection is too precise to be simple combat recovery, so he began studying the mechanism behind it. He realized that each revival involves a green surge of energy entering the statue's body from an external source. The older man checks that he truly witnessed that transfer. He confirms he saw it clearly and has been following that clue ever since. Guided by that deduction, the two move deeper through the mansion toward the source. Using a heightened spirit sight ability, the younger man sharpens his vision enough to trace hidden supernatural connections. That sight leads him to a specific room on the second floor, where he says the statue's resurrection energy is coming from. He opens the door without hesitation to test his theory. Inside, the room appears ordinary at first, lined with paintings and furniture rather than any obvious ritual device. The older man shivers at the oppressive chill, while the younger man keeps searching in silence. His enhanced vision finally locks onto one painting, where a purple aura exposes the hidden target, and he declares he has found it. He reaches for the frame, sensing the concealed mechanism behind the artwork. Working together, the two men pull the painting off the wall to reveal what it was hiding. Behind it they discover a hidden recess, and their confusion turns to alarm as they realize it resembles an altar. At the center hangs a coffin-like crystal vessel above a ritual circle and candles, clearly serving as the heart of the resurrection setup. The younger man warns that using a demon suppression talisman here could blow up the cramped chamber, so he leaves the exorcism to his companion. The older man answers by invoking a formal banishment, channeling spiritual power through his talisman to drive out every ghost and evil presence. His attack strikes the crystal altar directly, but instead of collapsing, it absorbs or redirects the force in a spiraling distortion. Both men are shocked as they realize the altar is only a projection, meaning the true main body is hidden somewhere else. Before they can process that failure, the younger man abruptly recognizes the returning threat and calls out Azure Lightning Strike. A sudden message from Ji Qinglin jolts the group, making them realize she is trying to reach them from somewhere else. The warning hits hard enough to leave them momentarily stunned. They discover the message is coming through the mirror, which is showing another space where danger is unfolding. Inside that reflected world, a white-haired woman is facing a heavily armored anomaly that towers over her. The man tries to contact Ji Qinglin directly, but learns their connection is blocked and they can only receive her one-way transmissions. Watching the fight worsen, he understands they need a way to intervene before the altar in that space is destroyed. His companion reveals he has a rare ability called Drunken Dream Divine Mechanism that could let him enter an instant's dungeon through sleep. The plan immediately runs into a problem. To use it, he must get completely drunk and pass out, but he has already finished his own wine. He presses the urgency of finding more spirit wine at once. The man answers by pulling out a costly jug of drunken immortal brew from his reserves. He follows it with an even more valuable pot of Empress Amrita, showing he has no shortage of resources. He adds jade nectar as well, making it clear he can supply whatever is needed. Faced with that absurd stockpile, the drinker can only gape. When asked if it will be enough, he admits it is far more than enough and would knock him out several times over. He is baffled that someone who does not rely on spirit wine would be carrying so much of it. The man casually explains that he simply has plenty of achievement points to spend. Meanwhile, the armored anomaly keeps regenerating, proving brute force alone will not stop it. Ji Qinglin's voice reaches the white-haired woman, confirming she is hearing guidance from outside the fight. A small spirit guide cuts off any questions and tells her to focus on the anomaly in front of her. Accepting that, the woman asks for direct instructions. The spirit explains that the statue is immortal and will revive endlessly no matter how many times it is destroyed. To end it, she must destroy the altar feeding it, which is hidden behind a painting in the third study on the left of the second floor. The route and hiding place are made clear so someone outside the trapped space can act on it. The woman acknowledges the plan as the spirit urges haste before the anomaly finishes regenerating again. She and the spirit immediately sprint off to carry out the instructions while the armored monster gives chase. Seeing this through the mirror, the man doubts the rescue will proceed as smoothly as they hope. He sharpens his focus, clearly suspecting a complication. In the study, he begins searching the paintings for the hidden altar described in the message. One framed battle scene draws his attention as a likely cover. After checking behind it, he realizes that one is not the right hiding place. Elsewhere, the spirit guide leads the white-haired woman toward the correct room. Before they can settle in, a furious blue apparition erupts from a painting, revealing another trap waiting for them. The spirit lunges forward to shield the woman from the sudden attack. An axe comes crashing down with lethal force. The armored anomaly catches up at the same moment, turning the search into a coordinated ambush. Back outside, the drinker senses that something has gone badly wrong. Surrounded by stacks of paintings in the study, he realizes the room itself is far stranger than expected and that the obvious hiding places are misleading. He keeps checking one painting after another, but none of them match the altar's location. When the drinker wakes enough to help, the man calls him over instead of letting him stay confused on the sidelines. The drinker protests that Ji Qinglin is being driven back by the anomaly and that the search is wasting precious time. The man insists he is not stalling. He is trying to identify the specific painting that matters. The explanation sounds cryptic until he studies an image showing a panicked father and a calm girl, and starts piecing together the truth behind the haunting. He concludes that the real culprit was never the father but the daughter, who became obsessed with dark rituals and transformed her own father into a monster. That also explains why the earlier painting was bait. The daughter used it to lure victims into the gallery. The drinker finally understands why Ji Qinglin was blocked from entering the study, but still does not see what the man is aiming for. The man reasons that the daughter's true body should be hidden somewhere in this constructed nightmare, separate from the monsterized father. He further deduces that after dying and becoming an evil spirit, she possessed a self-portrait. So instead of wasting time on the altar alone, he decides that destroying her self-portrait will cripple her even if it does not finish her outright. At the last moment, he catches the deeper pattern behind the trap. He realizes she deliberately split them up so the anomaly could pick them off one by one, and warns the others of her strategy. The young man concludes that their enemy's weakness is only being able to handle one side of the fight at a time. Acting on that insight, he and his companion tear through the room's paintings, urgently searching for the hidden target. Elsewhere in the mansion, the silver-haired woman waits amid the distortion, still tracking the anomaly. A furious blue spirit lashes out through a suit of armor, driving it to attack and screaming for everyone to die. The woman realizes the murderous spirit itself is the true source behind the disturbance. Before it can fully act, a sudden strike cuts across the spirit's body. A second blow follows immediately, showing someone has begun attacking the spirit from another front. The woman is caught off guard by how abruptly the situation changes. She watches as the spirit is forced back and the armor it possessed starts to break apart. Back in the gallery, the robed man confirms the threat is converging on them. Rather than retreat, the pair decide to greet it head-on and prepare an ambush. The robed man swings his artifact in a wide arc as they reposition inside the painting-filled room. The blue spirit surges into another armored statue, using it as a fresh body. The two men brace themselves as rubble and cold energy spill into the hall. The robed man admits he is nearly out of spiritual power and cannot keep fighting at full strength. The younger man hands him a glowing object and tells him to use it to hold the spirit off for now. Seeing it up close, the robed man realizes he has been given a genuine spiritual artifact. He is stunned that the younger man possesses a mid-grade artifact of such quality. The younger man casually explains that his stockpile comes from his parents' inheritance. Before they can relax, the shattered spirit begins regenerating again from the debris. The robed man activates the artifact, unleashing a wave of golden power that crashes into the blue entity. The impact drives the possessed armor down with explosive force. The younger man watches as chunks of stone and frame fragments rain through the room. Even so, the armored shell starts knitting itself back together under the spirit's power. The pair hold their ground as the rebuilt body suddenly collapses again. The younger man realizes their ally Ji Qinglin must have finished dealing with the other side of the anomaly. At the same time, another hidden vessel in the mansion is smashed apart. The silver-haired woman destroys a framed anchor and channels electricity through her weapon. The spirit erupts free once more, desperately trying to force itself back into action. The robed man judges that this time the anomaly is finally close to true death. He taunts the spirit and challenges it to reveal whether it has any tricks left. In answer, the spirit mutates into a more grotesque, two-faced form. It fires off a burst of power, forcing the robed man to react. The robed man panics and chases after the fleeing spirit, trying to stop it from escaping. The younger man slides into its path and intercepts the spirit before it can get away. He opens a glowing yellow pouch-like artifact and draws the spirit into it. With the bag sealed, he successfully captures the anomaly alive. The robed man confirms the capture, and the younger man calmly answers that it is done. The robed man reminds him that Bureau rules forbid private ownership of dangerous distortion anomalies like this one. The younger man immediately offers a bribe in the form of a jug of drunken immortal brew. The offer visibly shakes the robed man's resolve. He weakly protests about regulations, only for the younger man to raise the bid to 2 jugs. To make the choice even harder, the younger man adds more rare drinks and tells him to decide. Temptation wins, and the two seal their bargain with an enthusiastic handshake. The robed man justifies the deal by declaring the anomaly completely shattered and therefore no longer recoverable. The younger man senses something shift around them the moment the agreement is made. Their handshake triggers the mansion's spatial distortion, and the room begins warping again. The silver-haired woman arrives just in time to catch them in the middle of this suspicious scene and dryly questions their hobby. Both men instantly try to pass everything off as a pure accident, while she remains unconvinced. Ignoring their excuses, she reports that the mansion's spatial anomaly has vanished and asks for the current distortion energy reading. A remote observer confirms that the dangerous distortion and energy surge at the estate have rapidly subsided, suggesting the incident is over. With the objective complete, the white-haired woman orders the team to withdraw and return to make their report. Her companions silently fall in with that decision, the mission shifting from action to assessment. The 3 operatives leave the scene together, carrying the outcome of the operation back to their superiors. Their report is formally compiled, turning the chaotic encounter into an official record for review. A senior official contacts one of the field agents and asks for any final judgment about Lin Guiyun's role in the mission. The first evaluation is blunt. Lin is far stronger than someone with only a single game clear should be. A second assessment adds that, despite that abnormal strength, he consistently risks himself to protect civilians and teammates. The same report concludes that Lin is sharp, perceptive, and highly promising, but clearly hiding major secrets. Those hidden truths appear tied to his family background, hinting that his origins may explain what makes him unusual. Satisfied with the intelligence gathered, the official accepts the report and praises the agent's work. The operative ends the call and walks away, his duty complete for now. He treats the praise matter-of-factly, seeing his actions as nothing more than service to the organization. Elsewhere, Lin wakes in the real world and drags himself into motion, still adjusting after everything he experienced. Groggy and disoriented, he steps out in pajamas, trying to shake off the lingering weight of the game. At the sink, he pauses to collect himself before facing what his return really means. He runs cold water over his hands, using the physical sensation to ground himself. Then he splashes water over his face, forcing his mind fully awake. Once dressed and seated, he begins to examine his situation with deliberate calm. The golden guardian tied to him manifests again, proving that the power and events from the game were not a dream. Seeing the spirit beside him confirms that what happened there has carried over into reality. He realizes that only 2 real-world days have passed, even though the experience felt long enough to resemble an entire lifetime. Rather than dwell on that shock, he decides he needs a clear accounting of the dangers now surrounding him. He recalls that the original Sin game activates weekly and calculates that he has only 5 days before the next trigger. Beyond the game itself, he turns his thoughts to the Human Security Bureau and the pressure it may bring. He suspects the Bureau is already hostile, especially after the deputy chief abused his authority and treated him like a threat. The classified status of his parents' files convinces him that the Bureau is still hiding crucial truths about his family. Even so, he decides the Bureau remains useful enough that he should maintain a working relationship with it for now. That calculation is interrupted when his phone suddenly rings with a call from an unknown source. He answers cautiously, aware that whoever is calling likely knows exactly where he is. When the line opens with someone urgently confirming his identity, he is immediately put on alert. The caller introduces herself as Hyacinth, his newly assigned dedicated support operator. She tries to establish a friendly tone right away, presenting herself as someone he will be dealing with regularly. Lin is confused, because he expected Yanwei instead and does not understand why the assignment changed. Hyacinth explains that Yanwei was only a temporary stand-in and that a permanent operator had to be assigned afterward. When Lin refers to Yanwei by her real name, Ji Qinglin, he reveals knowledge that surprises his new handler. Hyacinth is thrown off that he knows information he apparently should not have been given. She explains that bureau operatives use codenames on duty to protect their identities, implying Lin should never have learned the real one. Lin admits he missed that part of training because an emergency deployment cut his instruction short. Hyacinth realizes that, because Bluebird registered him with his real name instead of a codename, the system accepted an irregular profile. Lin has no explanation for that anomaly, which only deepens the sense that his case is unusual even by bureau standards. To resolve the confusion, Hyacinth starts digging through the system for his official registration data. She quickly finds his file and discovers that his assigned codename is Torch Dragon. The revelation gives Lin an official bureau identity at last, even if the codename itself feels strange. He repeats the name to himself, trying to make sense of what it implies about how the bureau sees him. But Hyacinth notices a more troubling irregularity. The codename is linked to 2 registered users. Puzzled and intrigued, she pushes deeper and finds that the second user's profile has been hidden behind a firewall. She begins breaking through the protection, treating the hidden record as a mystery worth exposing. Her decryption succeeds, opening access to the concealed identity. The hidden Torch Dragon turns out to be Lin Fengyan, and the file marks him as a suspected defector, tying Lin's codename directly to a dangerous secret from his family. A young man is jolted when someone on the phone suddenly mentions a defection. At the same time, his support operator faces a full security lockdown as warning alerts flood her systems. Realizing she has triggered a serious violation, she cuts the conversation short and promises to call back after dealing with it. He tries to stop her and demand what this supposed defection means, but the line goes dead. A warning notice on his phone confirms that whatever she touched has already drawn official attention. He quickly pieces together the implication that the suspected defector may be one of the founding elders, and that this may explain the old man's hostility toward him. Before he can think further, another call interrupts him. He answers while still trying to understand the sudden turn of events. The caller turns out to be Ji-Qing Lin. She explains that the support specialist has already delivered the training badge and materials he was waiting for. With the matter settled, the call ends immediately. He goes to the door to collect the delivery. He opens it without delay. A courier formally hands over his assigned items and asks him to verify them. He accepts the package. Still overwhelmed by the back-to-back interruptions, he barely has time to process anything. He heads back inside, thinking he cannot even catch his breath. Sitting down with the materials, he decides to study the training information first and leave the mystery of the old man for later. The documents explain that anomalies are ranked by danger, with Echo-class creatures being common but still threatening to ordinary people. Night-class anomalies are described as stronger distortions that already require supernatural abilities or heavy firepower to defeat. Bishop-class threats are powerful enough to devastate cities and endanger vast populations. Templar-class anomalies stand above that, capable of shaking the foundations of civilization itself. Beyond them lie the catastrophic upper ranks, being so extreme they could threaten the entire world. He compares the ranking system to the one he already knows and concludes that his current level should roughly place him at silver rank. He then notes a key difference. The demon-suppressing talisman he uses functions more like an item or ability than a direct measure of rank. To avoid being caught unprepared on his next mission, he decides he needs to master more supernatural abilities as soon as possible. Just then, his phone starts ringing again. The caller is Hyacinth. She finally reconnects and jokes that merely looking up a codename nearly got her arrested. He immediately asks whether she found anything about Lin Fengyan. She refuses to dig further, making it clear she has no intention of risking herself over that name. She explains that even reading a single line about him triggered pursuit by police and security programs. After narrowly escaping and hiding herself, she admits the incident ranks among the worst crises of her slacking career. He presses her for a reason. She asks whether he actually knows who Lin Fengyan is. He reveals that Lin Fengyan is his father. The answer shocks her so badly that her confidence collapses on the spot. Panicking, she half-seriously asks whether it is too late for her to become a state witness. Instead of letting her spiral, he starts calmly listing everything that ties her to him as his assigned support operator. He reminds her that she was the one who proactively investigated his codename. He adds that she also accessed classified files and bypassed internal security, making her involvement impossible to deny. That realization sends her into despair as she mourns the career, benefits, and future she thinks she has just destroyed. He points out that she is focusing on the wrong problem. He assures her that if she keeps quiet, the organization will only treat the incident as a suspected defection, and since she alone handled the data, no one else has to learn the truth. She can hardly believe he is serious, but he insists he is. Having calmed her enough to listen, he says he still needs a favor from her as a friend. Wary but trapped, she asks what he wants. He asks for a way to awaken spiritual power. Relieved that the request is not classified, she agrees to look it up immediately. She promises to compile the information into a file and send it to him. He learns that awakening is not mystical but a mutation of the body triggered by introducing and refining external energy. The system explains that cultivation methods, spirit stones, and sacred treasures all serve as catalysts for that transformation. Wanting the least risky path, he asks what method is safest for awakening. He is told the most reliable option comes from exchange rewards, where many people obtain their first ability. When he hears there is a ranking of the best awakening rewards, he immediately asks for the strongest options and receives the list. Time passes as he prepares to act on that information. By night, he is still focused on the decision in his room. He paces restlessly, weighing the cost and risk of his choice. After circling the room in thought, he narrows his attention to the items laid out before him. He finally commits to one option. Ignoring the other rewards, he reaches for a purple crystal as his chosen awakening material. The item is identified as the Everfire Tribulation Crystal, a high-level material tied to the power of destined fire through the agony of being consumed. Even knowing it is advanced and dangerous, he judges it worth the gamble. The system confirms it offers an extremely high chance of awakening a fire ability, and that the method of use is simply to consume it, though the process will hurt. Determined to clear the next mission no matter what, he decides he can earn more rewards later and swallows the crystal. At first, the act seems almost disappointingly easy. He even notes that it does not taste that bad. The false calm breaks instantly as the crystal begins taking effect. Pain drives him to the floor beside the table before he can steady himself. A searing heat erupts inside him, and he realizes his stomach feels like it is burning from within. The system reports that the crystal is altering his constitution and that spiritual energy awakening is underway. Already overwhelmed, he snaps that he understands the obvious and needs something more useful. He demands practical guidance while fighting through the torment. The system reveals the process is a spiritual metamorphosis and that his current tribulation fire affinity has only begun to rise. He curses the low starting affinity, understanding that only someone with unusual endurance could survive pushing it all the way to full compatibility. Still in agony, he slams the table and forces himself to endure rather than give up. His body keeps venting heat as he clenches down on the pain. When the worst wave passes, he drags himself upright, still steaming and unsteady. He fixes his eyes on the remaining constitution-enhancing food he had set aside. Realizing brute endurance alone may not be enough, he quickly changes tactics. He grabs the peach-shaped item to reinforce himself mid-transformation. Abandoning restraint, he bites into it and starts devouring the support items. The extra nourishment works, improving his constitution and pushing his tribulation fire affinity sharply higher. Seeing the effect, he orders the system to bring out every constitution-enhancing item he owns. More consumables appear on the table, all ready to be burned through for survival. He frantically eats and drinks everything available, driving his affinity upward in rapid jumps. The gamble pays off as the system announces he has successfully unlocked a new ability, Creation Tribulation Fire. Exhausted but relieved, he collapses back into the chair and lets himself breathe. Once he recovers, he opens his inventory to inspect what remains after the costly awakening. He forces a strained smile, half proud of succeeding and half pained by what it cost him. Testing the result, he summons a small purple flame and complains that his first mission nearly drained all his rewards. Even so, he warns the new fire that it had better justify the expense by being truly powerful. Before he can dwell on that, the system announces he has also completed a hidden mission. Caught off guard, he immediately asks what this unexpected reward means. The system explains that by unlocking the spiritual energy system before the third instance, he has opened a support shop. He learns the shop appears before each instance and lets him trade merit points for useful supplies, including local currency, spirit clothing, and other items. He recognizes this as a major advantage for surviving future instances, but then realizes he still has to manage the next few ordinary days first. That practical problem gives him an immediate idea. He goes to fetch a large box, clearly preparing to put that new plan into motion. By the end, he stands in the room facing a small cat, shifting from survival mode to whatever everyday arrangement comes next. The young man turns to a small idol, and the spirit tied to it announces that it is time to solve his current problem. The idol identifies itself as the matriarch Shenv, a mother goddess of the underworld whose usual demand is blood offerings. He immediately rejects that kind of worship and insists that if she is going to stay with him, she will have to become a proper god instead of feeding on blood. To satisfy her another way, he produces a captured anomaly from the cabin in the woods. The glowing bundle is set before the idol as a substitute offering. He explains that if she wants anomalies from the original Sin game, he can provide plenty of them. The offering begins reacting in front of the idol, as if the exchange is taking effect. The goddess focuses on the anomaly, accepting the arrangement. The captured creature thrashes violently as it is consumed or subdued by the ritual. Time passes, and the date of the second original Sin game instance arrives. A call from Ji Qinglin comes in, signaling that the next operation is about to begin. On the call, he is informed that today is the day, and that the Burial Society members assigned to this operation should be arriving at his home any moment. Realizing the schedule has caught up with him, he prepares to receive them. Now dressed formally, he reassures himself that he is ready and has not overlooked anything important. Even so, he senses something unusual before anyone speaks. When he steps out, he finds several Burial Society members already surrounding him in silence, their collective attention fixed on him. The oppressive scrutiny becomes so obvious that he finally calls it out. He is told that this is simply the weight of the Burial Society's gaze, and that he will get used to it after a few more encounters. Elsewhere, A woman monitoring him through a screen listens in on the exchange. She explains that if the players inside an instance are wiped out, the organization must assume the instance has gone out of control and move at once to stop the anomalies from spreading. That means the Burial Society members would be the first to confront the escaped anomalies directly, making them the front line in a worst-case scenario. The woman confirms that this duty is extremely dangerous without any hesitation.